The night the Freeway Phantom announced he was coming for Jenny Kim, my husband Chris Evans, captain of the Robbery Homicide Division, personally zipped me into Jenny's signature red dress. "Selena," he said, his voice tight. "I'm begging you. This is the only way." The psycho named her specifically. "You're the only one with the training, the only one who can draw him out and survive." I clutched the sonogram photo in my pocket, the paper crinkling under my fingers. I hadn't even had the chance to show it to him. A choked, "okay," was all I could manage. He pulled me into a hug, relief washing over him. He swore on his badge that his B-team would be right behind me, that they wouldn't let a single thing happen to me. But when the killer's reinforced pickup truck slammed into my car again and again, forcing me towards the guardrail of the Vincent Thomas Bridge, my only lifeline, the burner phone on the passenger seat, lit up. It wasn't a message that help was on the way. It was a 2-word text from Chris. "All clear. In his mind, as long as Jenny Kim was safely evacuated, the mission was a success. As for me, the forgotten bait? I was never part of the plan. The moment the cold bay water flooded my lungs, I didn't feel pain. Just a deep, penetrating cold. Colder than the winter training exercises at the academy, when we had to crawl through freezing mud pits. That year, I'd passed out from cramps in the middle of the drill. It was Chris who had hauled me out like a madman, carrying me 2 miles to the infirmary. He'd sworn through tears back then, "Selena, if I ever let you suffer like this again, I don't deserve to wear this badge." Now, that badge was pinned to his uniform, crisp and authoritative. And he had just personally sent me, 2 months pregnant, into the path of a monster. All clear. The phone screen flickered on and off in the dark water, the last message I'd ever get from him. Just 2 words. It meant I'd done my job. The psycho was lured away, and his precious Jenny was safe. Whether the bait was rammed off a bridge and left for dead at the bottom of the ocean, well, that wasn't part of his equation. The immense pressure of the water squeezed my abdomen. I instinctively tried to curl up, to protect my belly, but the mangled dashboard had my legs pinned. A searing pain ripped through my insides, a vicious, twisting agony. Just before I blacked out, I saw the glove compartment pop open. A small, silver medallion tumbled out. It was a St. Christopher medal. The day we graduated from the academy, Chris had driven all the way to the old San Gabriel mission to have it blessed. He told me, "Selena, you're always running into the fire. This is for me, to keep you safe when I can't." But just half an hour ago, I'd watched him palm my medal and swap it with the cheap replica he'd bought for Jenny. His excuse? "Jen's a wreck, she believes in this stuff. You're a pro, Selena. You don't need superstitions." The silver medal drifted in the murky water, glinting like a single, lost tear. I closed my eyes in despair. "Chris, your saints can't save me now. You killed me yourself." I woke up to pain. A grinding, gnawing sensation, like a million fire ants devouring me from the inside out. "She's awake. Doctor, my wife is awake." It was Chris's voice, thick with a mixture of shock and overwhelming relief. I forced my eyes open. He looked like hell. A scraggly beard, bloodshot eyes, his uniform wrinkled and stained. He'd clearly been here for days. When he saw me looking at him, he grabbed my hand, his grip so tight it hurt. "Selena, you're finally awake. God, you scared the hell out of me. If anything had happened to you, I would never, ever forgive myself." A hot tear splashed onto the back of my hand. The old me would have been moved. I would have wiped his tears away and teased him, telling him this wasn't the tough-as-nails Captain Evans everyone knew. But now, all I felt was a wave of nausea. I pulled my hand away. My voice was a dry rasp. "Where's the baby?" Chris froze. The relief on his face curdled, and his eyes darted away from mine. "Selena, you just woke up. You're weak. Here, have some water. I asked you about the baby." I screamed, the effort tearing at my stitches and sending a fresh wave of agony through me. He grabbed my shoulders, still refusing to meet my gaze. "Selena, you need to calm down. The car, the frame was too twisted. A piece of rebar, it went right through," he stammered. "The doctor said, if they didn't perform a hysterectomy, you would have died, too." He finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I'm a cop, Selena, but I'm also your husband. I had to make the call to save you. I had to save you." Boom. The last thread holding me together snapped. A hysterectomy. I didn't just lose my child. I lost the chance to ever be a mother. I stared at him, my eyes burning but completely dry. "You knew I was pregnant." It wasn't a question. Before I left for the mission, I'd propped the sonogram photo up on the coffee table, right where he'd see it. I wanted it to be a surprise. He couldn't have missed it. His face went pale. He tried to sidestep. I thought it was just. I didn't know about the killer, not then. "You're lying," I whispered. "You're the best forensics guy the department has. You can read a crime scene from a single footprint, but you can't recognize a sonogram? You knew I was pregnant. And you still put me in that red dress and sent me out to die for her. You sent me, a SWAT officer, to be a human shield for your precious, fragile Jenny." Crack. Chris slammed the water pitcher down on the bedside table, sending shards of glass flying. His eyes were red, too, but with rage. "Selena, that's enough," he yelled. "Jenny's been having asthma attacks from the stress all week. You're a trained officer. You can handle yourself. What about her? She can't even open a pickle jar by herself. To sacrifice for the greater good. Isn't that the oath we took at the academy? Besides, I fixed it. I put 2 rounds in the killer's head myself. What more do you want from me?" I looked at this furious, broken man in front of me, and I started to laugh. A hollow, broken sound that made my incisions scream and a small patch of red bloom on my hospital gown. "Chris," I said, my voice eerily calm. "That was your child. You murdered your own child to save Jenny Kim." He flinched as if I'd struck him. All the fight drained out of him, and he collapsed into the chair. Selena, I'm so sorry. We'll get through this. We don't need kids. I'll take care of you forever, I promise. Jenny feels terrible, she. Just then, a special ringtone, his special ringtone for her, chimed from his pocket. He answered it like a reflex, his voice instantly dropping to a gentle, soothing murmur. Jenny? Don't cry. I'm here. A nightmare? It's okay, don't be scared. I'll be right there. He hung up, not daring to look at me. Selena? Jenny's in the VIP wing. Her nerves are shot. She's been talking about hurting herself. I have to go check on her. You get some rest. I'll send a nurse in. With that, he practically fled the room. I watched him go. The same man who had gotten down on one knee on the academy training field, in front of the entire graduating class, and promised me his life. Now, he was walking on the blood of our child to go soothe another woman back to sleep. Chris picked me up the day I was discharged. He cleaned the car meticulously. A bouquet of my favorite champagne roses was sitting on the passenger seat. Selena, let's go home. He gently buckled my seatbelt, his movements cautious and tender. I took the month off. I'm going to stay home and help you recover. And that trip to Napa we always talked about? As soon as you're feeling better, we'll go. He was trying so desperately to pretend everything was normal. But I could smell it. The faint, sweet scent of gardenia perfume. Jenny's signature scent. I pulled open the glove compartment. It was empty. The Street Christopher medal I always kept in there was gone. In its place was a single, rhinestone hair clip. Chris followed my gaze, his face tightening for a split second before he slammed the compartment shut. Oh, that. Jenny must have left it in here when I drove her to the hospital. He forced a laugh. Selena, don't overthink it. I'm not, I said, my voice flat as I stared out the window. Just drive. The dead silence in the car was clearly making him panic. He would have preferred it if I screamed at him, hit him, anything but this. This empty, soulless doll. We got home. My fingerprint had been deleted from the smart lock. I tried 3 times. Access denied. Chris looked mortified. The system must have rebooted during a recent update, he mumbled, quickly punching in the code. The moment the door swung open, I thought I was in the wrong apartment. Jenny's abstract paintings hung on the walls. Jenny's collection of plush dolls was piled on the sofa. Even my prized orchids, which I had spent 3 years cultivating on the balcony, had been ripped out and replaced with rows of blooming gardenias. And there was Jenny herself, emerging from the kitchen wearing my silk pajamas and Chris's favorite apron, holding a plate of smoky barbecue ribs. She gave me a timid, almost apologetic smile. Selena, you're back. Chris told me you were coming home today, so I wanted to make you something special. He taught me how to make these, she said, her voice soft. It's his special recipe. You should try some. She was acting like she was the lady of the house welcoming a guest. Chris rushed over and took the plate from her, his voice full of concern. I told you not to cook. You just burned your hand yesterday. Then he turned to me, his tone shifting to one of weary authority. Selena, Jenny worked all morning to do something nice for you, to apologize. She hates the smell of smoke. The least you could do is appreciate the gesture instead of standing there with that look on your face. I stared at the plate of ribs. The first meal Chris ever made for me, back when he was a rookie and I was still in the academy. He'd made them in his tiny, 10x10 studio apartment to celebrate me winning the academy's hand-to-hand combat tournament. He'd said, Selena, I'm gonna make you my famous barbecue ribs for the rest of your life. Now, that same dish was being used as a weapon, a declaration of victory from another woman. I walked over. I took the plate of ribs. And in front of their shocked faces, I turned and scraped the entire thing, plate and all, into the kitchen trash can. Clang. The noise made Jenny shriek and shrink back into Chris's arms. Selena, what the hell is wrong with you? Chris roared, shielding Jenny as if I were about to attack her. She was trying to apologize. If you're angry, take it out on me. Don't you dare bully her. I pointed a trembling finger at the gardenias, at the pajamas Jenny was wearing. Apologize? By wearing my clothes, sleeping with my husband, and taking over my home? Is that what you call an apology? Chris, did you really think that when they took out my uterus, they took out my brain, too? Jenny started crying, a delicate, theatrical performance that looked like it would end with her fainting. That's not it, Selena, I swear. My clothes got dirty, and Chris said I could borrow yours. Shut up, I said, my voice ice cold. This is my house. Get your things, and get out. Selena. Chris clutched the sobbing woman in his arms even tighter, his eyes filled with a profound disappointment. When did you become so unreasonable? Reporters were camped outside her apartment. She had nowhere else to go, so I told her she could stay here for a few days. You used to be the most understanding, level-headed person I knew. Why are you acting so vindictive? Vindictive. So that's what I was. A vindictive shrew, for daring to defend what was mine. Fine, I nodded slowly. This is fine. I turned and walked into our bedroom. On the nightstand, our huge wedding portrait, the one that was nearly 3 feet wide, was gone. In its place was a framed photo of Chris and Jenny, smiling together. I dragged my suitcase out of the closet and started throwing in a few changes of clothes. Every corner of this home felt tainted, filthy. Chris followed me in, and the sight of me packing finally seemed to pierce through his anger into raw panic. What are you doing? Where are you going? He snatched the suitcase from my hand. I'm not letting you leave. This is your home. Selena, can you please stop this? If it makes you happy, I'll tell Jenny to leave right now, okay? We can start over. We can forget about the baby. We can adopt later. Chris. I cut him off. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and slapped it against his chest. It was the divorce petition. I've already signed it. You can have the house. You can have the car. And you can have her. All I want is my freedom. Chris stared at the paper, the anger in his eyes finally being drowned out by pure, unadulterated terror. It was like he was only just now realizing I was serious. No. I'm not signing. Selena, you can't divorce me over something so small. Small? I pointed to my own flat stomach. 2 lives. You call that small? Chris, on the day we swore our oath at the academy, you promised to always uphold justice. But it turns out, you are the greatest injustice I have ever known. I shoved past him and dragged my suitcase toward the door. As I passed Jenny, who was still cowering in the living room, I paused. I leaned in close to her ear and whispered, my voice low enough that only she could hear. By the way, Jenny, you really think the freeway phantom is dead? I didn't go far after leaving that house. I just checked into a cheap motel off the highway. The wound in my abdomen was a dull, constant ache. My body's way of reminding me that it once held a life, and now all that was left was an ugly scar. I knew the killer wasn't dead because of a split-second glimpse I got that night. In the flash of the headlights, just as his truck crumpled the front of my car, I saw his wrist. When you're facing death, your senses sharpen to a razor's edge. On the inside of the hand gripping the steering wheel, there was a tattoo of a black spider. But when I woke up in the hospital, Chris had shoved the closed case file in my face, trying to prove he'd already gotten revenge for me and our baby. The photo was of a man whose head had been blown apart, his face unrecognizable. But his arms, laid bare, were clean. No tattoos. Chris had been in too much of a hurry, too eager to prove to Jenny that the danger was gone, too desperate to show off his power as her protector. So eager that he overlooked a fatal detail like that. As for me, the bait, whether I'd actually seen anything or not didn't matter to him. I popped the SIM card out of my phone and tossed it in the trash. Finally, the world went quiet. But it only took half a day for Chris to find me. Finding people was his specialty, after all. Bang, bang, bang. The pounding on the motel room door was loud enough to make other guests poke their heads out into the hallway. I opened the door. Chris stood there, holding a thermos. Selena, stop this. Come home with me. His voice was hoarse. He reached for me, but I sidestepped his hand. It hung awkwardly in the air, a flicker of embarrassment crossing his face. He took a deep breath and set the thermos on the small table. My mom made you some chicken soup. You're still recovering. You can't stay in a place like this. What if you get an infection? Did you sign them? I asked, leaning against the doorframe, my voice cold. His temper flared instantly. Selena, how long are you going to torture me over this accident? I told you, it was a choice of necessity. If I hadn't saved Jenny, she'd be dead right now. So you'd let me die instead? But you didn't die, did you? The words escaped his lips, and the room fell into a dead silence. He seemed to realize what he'd just said, his face paling as he scrambled to explain. Selena, that's not what I meant. I meant, you're trained. You have survival skills. Jenny, she's just a civilian. Yeah, I didn't die, I cut him off calmly, gesturing to my stomach. But I took the hit for you. And the price was losing my ability to ever be a mother. Chris, we're even now. I used to think that because I chased you for 3 years at the academy, I was lucky to have you. Now I realize, you'll never be good enough for me. Chris's eyes were red as he stared at me. You're going to throw away 7 years of our lives over an embryo that wasn't even fully formed? That was my child. I swept the thermos off the table. Hot, greasy soup splattered across the cheap carpet, as nauseating as the fake affection he was showing me. Get out. Chris stared at the mess on the floor, his jaw clenched. Fine. You need to cool off. We'll talk when you're calm. He turned to leave, but paused at the door, his back to me. About the killer, he said, his voice low. I know you're just trying to scare Jenny, to make her feel guilty. But you can't make jokes like that. It causes public panic. The case is closed. Don't ever bring it up again. Watching his retreating back, I felt an overwhelming wave of pity. He was hailed as a genius detective, the captain with a 100% clearance rate. But when it came to Jenny Kim, he was completely blind. I filed my resignation papers. As I walked out of the precinct, I saw Jenny in a black sedan parked around the corner. She was wearing sunglasses, slouched in the passenger seat, probably waiting for Chris to get off work. When she saw me, she rolled down the window and took off her sunglasses, revealing a pair of puffy, red-rimmed eyes. Selena, are you really leaving? She asked, her voice timid, but her eyes held a spark of triumph she couldn't quite hide. Don't blame him. It was chaos that night. He was just acting on instinct. Instinct, I repeated, walking up to her window and looking down at her. Instinct is the most honest thing a person has. His instinct was to choose you and abandon me. There's nothing to defend. Jenny bit her lip. I'll talk to Chris, maybe you guys can adopt. Jenny. I cut off her performance. I leaned down, my hands on the edge of the open window, forcing her to look me in the eye. Do you really think I'm stupid enough to believe the killer chose his victims at random? Her face stiffened. What are you talking about? The freeway phantom, before he strikes, he leaves a dried gardenia at the victim's doorstep. That's what it says in the case file, right? Her eyes flickered. I don't know. Chris never told me the details. You're lying. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. That day in our apartment, I smelled your gardenia perfume. It's your favorite scent. And it's the killer's favorite calling card. You used to live in South City, and the killer came from there too. Come on, Jenny. You're telling me you don't know him. I don't. You're making this up, she shrieked, her voice suddenly sharp and shrill, all the fragile weakness gone. You're just jealous. You're jealous that Chris loves me. You can't scare me with these stupid stories. Just then, Chris came rushing out of the building. Jenny. He shoved me aside and pulled her behind him, glaring at me. Selena, what the hell are you doing now? Are you harassing a victim? The push sent me stumbling back, pulling at my stitches. I sucked in a sharp breath against the pain, but I held my ground. Looking at this tragic couple, all I felt was a dark sense of amusement. "Chris," I said calmly. "Check your back seat." He frowned. "What?" When I walked over here, I saw a piece of paper tucked into the seat cushion. Suspicious, Chris opened the back door. The next second, he froze solid. I could see it too. It wasn't a piece of paper. It was a dried, blackened gardenia. And next to it was a printed card with just 3 words. "Found you again, Dot." Jenny leaned over to look, let out a blood-curdling scream, and fainted dead away in Chris's arms. Chris's hands were trembling. He whipped his head around to look at me, his eyes wide with terror and a desperate plea for help. "Selena, what is this? It's a prank, right? You put it there, didn't you?" Even now, he was still trying to lie to himself. I dusted off my hands and turned to leave. "I told you," I said over my shoulder. "The killer's not dead. She's all yours, Chris. Protect your precious Jenny yourself. This time, don't expect anyone else to pay the price for you." Jenny was moved into a safe house arranged by Chris. It was a classified location, meant for high-risk witnesses, its location known only to top brass. Chris started reinvestigating the case like a man possessed. But the deeper he dug, the more hopeless it became. The original case file was closed perfectly, too perfectly. To appease his superiors and the media, he'd even held a press conference announcing the killer was dead. To retract all of that now would be a public humiliation, an admission of a colossal failure. His career, his reputation, it would all be destroyed. That was his price to pay. Late one night, my new burner phone rang. It was Chris. "Selena, help me." The voice of the man who was once so confident and proud was now choked with sobs. "I'm outside the safe house. I feel like someone's watching me, but I can't see him. The surveillance cameras show nothing. The B team is on perimeter, but I'm still scared. Selena, you're the only one who could sense someone like him. Please, can you come help me? I'm begging you. Just one last time." I stood at my window, staring out into the night. "Chris," I resigned. "I'm a civilian now." "No, you're not. You're the best goddamn officer we ever had. Your instincts were never wrong." "My instinct is telling me to stay away," I said coldly. "And Chris, have you ever stopped to think how the killer was able to find a classified safe house so easily?" Silence on the other end of the line. "Unless," I said slowly, "the person who led him there is right beside you." "What are you talking about?" "Ask your precious Jenny. Ask her if she knew a tattoo artist named AJ in South City 5 years ago." With that, I hung up. I didn't find that out through police work. I found it while packing up my old things. I'd stumbled upon an old college photo of Chris and Jenny. In a corner of the picture, a man was staring darkly at Jenny, and on his wrist was the unfinished tattoo of a spider. There's no such thing as random hatred. The killer wasn't just murdering women in red dresses, it was some kind of ritual. And Jenny wasn't just the prey. She was the source. The next day, the news exploded. It wasn't a murder. It was a gas leak explosion at a residential complex. The address was the same as the safe house. I watched the smoke billowing on the TV screen, the fire trucks wailing. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an old colleague. "Selena, it's bad. Chris is in a coma, and Jenny Kim is missing. A lot of blood at the scene, and gardenias. They were everywhere. I put down my phone and changed into a black tracksuit. I wasn't a cop anymore, but I couldn't let that monster keep hurting people. More importantly, I had to be the one to end this nightmare. I drove to an abandoned sugar factory in the old industrial part of South City. This was where the tattoo artist, AJ, grew up. Chris would never find this place, he only knew how to search official databases. I knew how to work the streets. I pushed open the rusted iron gate. The air was thick with a cloyingly sweet and rotten smell. The smell of molasses mixed with blood. In the center of the vast, empty factory floor, Jenny was tied to a chair, trembling violently. She was wearing a red dress. The same red dress Chris had forced me to wear when he sent me to die in her place. A man stood with his back to me, sharpening a long knife. Shink. Shink. The sound echoed in the cavernous space. "You came," the man said without turning around. His voice was a dry rasp, like sandpaper. I knew that cop couldn't protect her. Only you could find this place. I saw his wrist. The black spider tattoo seemed to crawl as he moved the whetstone. "Let her go," I said calmly. Not because I wanted to save her, but because another body would just complicate things. The man turned around. His face was a horror show. One side was a mass of melted burned scars, but his eyes burned with a terrifying intensity. "Let her go," he gestured at Jenny with the knife. "Do you have any idea what she did?" Jenny was shaking her head frantically, a gag in her mouth muffling her cries into desperate sobs. "5 years ago, she was my queen," the man said, his gaze on Jenny now filled with a twisted adoration. "I got tattoos for her, stole for her, I even did prison time for her. She promised she'd wait for me. But the day I got out? I saw her holding hands with that cop, smiling like she'd won the lottery. She told me I was a maggot from the gutter and I should stay away before I got her dirty." He let out a wild, cackling laugh. "A maggot? Then what are you? You pretended to be pregnant to trap that cop, and then when you wanted to get rid of his girlfriend, you deliberately lured me out." My heart stopped. Pretended to be pregnant? I looked at Jenny. The killer saw my confusion. He walked over and ripped the gag from her mouth. "Go on. Tell the nice officer all about your so-called asthma attacks." Jenny screamed, "Shut up. You shut up. Chris will kill you." "That idiot," the man spat. "He still thinks you're some kind of saint. He has no idea you wrote that threat letter yourself. Also, he'd never leave your side." The truth hit me like a bolt of lightning, clearing away all the fog. Of course, there was no random, psycho killer. This was a meticulously staged drama of a woman being stalked. Jenny had used her obsessed ex-boyfriend to create a crisis, to bind Chris to her side forever. The car crash that night was probably just part of the show, to make it all look real. But she hadn't counted on one thing: the man had lost control. Or maybe, when he saw me show up in that red dress, he realized Jenny had betrayed their sick agreement once again, and he finally, truly, snapped. "Bravo," I said, and I actually started to clap. "Jenny, I wonder what kind of face Chris will make when he finds out his precious, perfect angel is actually a Venus flytrap." Jenny's face was ashen. She looked at me with pure desperation. "Selena, save me. If you save me, I'll leave Chris. I'll give everything back to you." "Give it back?" I took a step closer, my hand tightening on the collapsible baton hidden in my sleeve. "Can you give me back my uterus? Can you give me back my unborn child?" "It was an accident," she shrieked. "I never wanted you to die. It was Chris. Chris insisted you go. He said you were tough, that you could take a hit. He said I was too fragile to be scared. It was his choice. Blame him." Even facing death, she was still trying to pass the buck. But I knew she was telling the truth. The truth is what always hurts the most. "Look out!" Jenny's eyes suddenly went wide. The man lunged, the knife aiming straight for my throat. "Since you're here, you can stay with her." I dodged to the side, my baton snapping out and cracking hard against his wrist. I heard the sickening crunch of bone. But he was a man with nothing to lose. He didn't even flinch, simply switching the knife to his other hand and coming at me again, even more furiously. I was still weak from the surgery. Every twist, every block sent a searing pain through my abdomen. Cold sweat poured down my face. But I couldn't back down. We fought for what felt like an eternity. I had several new cuts bleeding on my arms and side. The killer was panting, his face a mask of blood and fury. Just as he was about to make a final, desperate lunge, the factory doors burst open. "LAPD, don't move." Chris charged in, flanked by a SWAT team. His head was wrapped in bandages, his face pale. He must have checked himself out of the hospital. When he saw Jenny tied to the chair, the panic in his eyes was palpable. "Jenny." He raised his gun without a moment's hesitation, aiming it at the killer. "Don't shoot," I yelled. "We need him alive." Only he could expose everything Jenny had done. But Chris wasn't listening. Or rather, he didn't want to listen. Bang. The shot was clean. Right between the eyes. The killer dropped like a stone, his eyes still fixed on Jenny, a mocking smile frozen on his lips. Dead. Again. The only witness was silenced, right on cue, by Chris. He rushed over, cut Jenny's ropes, and pulled her into his arms. It's okay now. I'm here." Jenny collapsed against his chest, sobbing, but over Chris's shoulder, her eyes met mine. She glanced at the body on the floor, and a flicker of pure relief crossed her face. Then, she gave me a look of pure, defiant triumph. A look that said, "See? I always win." I dropped my baton, a profound weariness washing over me. Only then did Chris seem to remember I was there. He turned, his gaze complicated as he took in my blood-soaked appearance. "Selena, thank you. You saved Jenny's life. Again." "Don't mention it," I said, pressing a hand to the bleeding wound on my side. I looked him dead in the eye. "That was a perfect shot, Chris. Almost like you were silencing a witness." The killer was dead. The case was closed. Again. Jenny Kim became the tragic, surviving victim, showered with protection and sympathy. Chris Evans, for rushing into danger while injured to take down a killer, was hailed as a hero. Again, it seemed like the truth had been buried by that single bullet. But I knew some things could never be buried. The day I got out of the hospital, I paid a visit to the county jail. I was there to see an old cellmate of AJ, the tattoo artist. The streets have their own code. A man might be gone, but his last wishes are honored. The inmate handed me a piece of paper with a login for a cloud storage account. AJ gave me this before he got out, he said. Told me if he ended up dead, I should give it to a female cop named Selena. Said the biggest regret of his life was falling for that bitch's lies. I opened the account. Inside were hundreds of audio files of phone conversations, along with screenshots of text messages. It was all there. From 5 years ago when Jenny convinced him to threaten her professional rivals, to the recent plot to stage a serial killer to win back Chris's heart. He even had the plan for the car crash that night. Just make sure Selena miscarries or ends up crippled. Chris will get tired of her. I'll pretend to have a panic attack, and you can slip away in the chaos. That was a message from Jenny to AJ. Every single word was a poison blade. It turned out, losing my child, losing my ability to ever be a mother, it wasn't an accident. It was murder. And the man I had once loved, Chris Evans, was the sharpest blade in her arsenal. I didn't take the evidence to the precinct. I knew with Chris's connections and the current public narrative, it would be buried or dismissed as fake. I didn't want justice. I wanted to burn their world to the ground. I compiled everything and sent it to Chris's biggest rival in the department, a bulldog from internal affairs named Zhao. Then, I wrote a long, detailed post, attaching all the evidence. But I didn't publish it. Not yet. I was waiting for the perfect moment. 3 days later was the LAPD's annual award ceremony. Chris Evans was scheduled to give the keynote speech as the hero of the hour. It was the biggest moment of their lives. And it was going to be their funeral. The award ceremony was a dazzling affair. Chris was on stage in his immaculate dress uniform, his chest heavy with medals. He spoke with passion about his battle with evil, about protecting the citizens of the city. The audience gave him a thundering ovation. Jenny sat in the front row, wearing a pristine white dress, looking like a saint, her eyes fixed adoringly on her hero. I was there too. I sat in the back, in a dark corner, holding a small remote. A spare I'd pocketed from my time in the tech division. Perks of being well-liked. Just as Chris reached the crescendo of his speech, for justice, for the city we serve, I would sacrifice everything. I pressed the button. The large screen behind him, which had been displaying a montage of his heroic moments, suddenly went black. Then, a shrill audio recording filled the auditorium. Just make sure Selena miscarries or ends up crippled. Chris will get tired of her. A shocked gasp rippled through the crowd. Chris's speech died in his throat. He stared in confusion at the screen. It lit up again, not with his face, but with screenshots of Jenny's text messages to the killer. One after another, damning and horrific. Then came a video clip from the sugar factory, of Jenny admitting she faked her asthma. It was Chris. He insisted you go. He said you were tough. It was his choice. Her voice, clear as day, echoed through the silent hall. The applause was replaced by a dead silence, then an eruption of disbelieving murmurs. The color drained from Jenny's face. She scrambled to her feet, trying to flee, but she was trapped in her seat by hundreds of staring eyes. Chris stood on the stage, trembling. He looked at the screen as if he couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. No, this isn't real. Jenny, you, he looked out at her, his eyes filled with a dawning, sickening horror. At that moment, Inspector Zhao and his team walked into the auditorium. Chris Evans, Jenny Kim, you are under arrest for conspiracy, accessory to attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. The cold click of handcuffs snapping onto Chris's wrists echoed through the hall. He jerked his head up, his eyes frantically scanning the crowd. Finally, he found me. I was just sitting there, not smiling, not crying. Just watching the drama unfold as if it had nothing to do with me. Selena, he screamed, trying to lunge toward me, but Zhao's men held him fast. Selena. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know she was like that. She tricked me. Selena, please, let me explain. I love you. He struggled pathetically. His pristine uniform hat fell to the floor and was trampled underfoot, smeared with dirt. Jenny had collapsed completely, wailing, Chris, save me, her makeup running in ugly streaks down her face. I stood up and smoothed down my clothes. Then I turned and walked out the door. The afternoon sun was bright, so bright it made my eyes water, but I knew I would never cry again. 3 months later, the verdict came down. For conspiracy to commit aggravated assault and a dozen other charges, Jenny Kim was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Even though the killer was dead, the evidence on his cloud drive was ironclad. As for Chris, while he hadn't directly participated in the plot, his gross negligence, dereliction of duty, and the resulting public scandal got him dishonorably discharged from the force and a sentence of 3 years, suspended. The once invincible super cop was finished. I heard he cried in the courtroom, begging the judge to let him see me one last time. I didn't go. My divorce had been finalized weeks ago. The court awarded me the house, and due to his role as the at-fault party, he had to pay me a substantial amount in damages. I sold the house immediately. I couldn't stand to spend another second in a place so full of rotten memories. With the money, I moved. Not to Napa, but to a small coastal town in Oregon. No more cases, no more blood, no more betrayal. Just the sea, the fog, and the quiet. I opened a small bed and breakfast overlooking the ocean. One afternoon, I was sitting on the porch, enjoying the sun. A man with a backpack walked up the path. He looked vaguely familiar. Excuse me, he said. Got a room for the night? I looked up and recognized him. He used to be a medical examiner back at the precinct. A quiet guy who'd had a crush on me, but back then, I only had eyes for Chris. He'd resigned too, he said. Decided he wanted to see the world. Any vacancies, he asked, a kind, easy smile on his face. I smiled back, a real smile, and gestured upstairs. I do. The best one in the house, actually. I've been saving it. The sunlight fell on him, warm and bright. I unconsciously touched my stomach. Though it would never carry a child, I knew one thing for certain. My life was just beginning. The end.